The Halo franchise is no stranger to including and then dumping new gameplay gimmicks. Pretty much each Halo has introduced something new that really only survived for one or two games. But despite how temporary certain gameplay accents are in Halo, the fanbase has a solid track record of growing attached to many of these one-off or two-time gimmicks. In a previous video, I discussed how equipment, a one-off gameplay item from Halo 3, appears to be poised for a return in Halo Infinite, and I broke down why it was lucky enough to be pulled from the vault. But today, we're turning our focus to another vaulted gameplay quirk that appears to be getting a second chance in Halo Infinite. That is armor abilities. I'm the Home Slice, Ascend Hyperion, and based on popular demand, today I'm going to be giving you all a breakdown of Halo's armor ability system. We'll explore what made armor abilities different from equipment, I'll explain the risks to gameplay the mechanic poses, and we'll wrap up by wagering if its return in Halo Infinite is positioned to be a success. Like always, be sure to subscribe for more fresh-baked Halo content, and be sure you catch my viewer question towards the end. Let's get this rolling. I've talked briefly before about how armor abilities represent an extension of the equipment system, and the most direct ways both affect the Halo gameplay experience. Now, the most simple way to understand how is to analyze how armor abilities affect Halo's combat system, the Golden Triangle. Equipment and abilities both create temporary rebalances of the effectiveness of guns, grenades, and melee, the means by which players fight in Halo. The big kicker in Halo 3 is that equipment items were not loadout compatible, meaning players couldn't spawn with them. They were neutral use, respawn based items that you could carry one of at a time. When we roll into Halo Reach and look at our set of armor abilities, we can observe that each one makes a front on the effectiveness of guns, grenades, and melee. Our first major issue is how these abilities are loadout compatible, so each player begins their life with at least one, and furthermore, the number of times the ability can be exerted is infinite, limited only by a cooldown timer. Now, this is a disclaimer. I'm not asserting that armor abilities are bad, quote unquote, for gameplay just yet. What I'm asserting right now is that they have palpable, recurrent, and in many ways unkempt effects on gameplay. Remember, one of the advantages of equipment is that the effects of the equipment items were highly designable and limited to the execution. Certain armor abilities have gone above and beyond their intended design. I think one factor of armor abilities that needs direct discussion is how aggressively many of them assaulted the Golden Triangle. Some abilities aim to completely nullify corners of the triangle rather than skew them, which was the case in the past. A great comparison is when you look at Halo 3's Bubble Shield when compared to Armor Lock. I know there's a Halo Reach Bubble Shield, but the idea between the two is still very similar. Both items skew the abilities of guns and grenades, sure. The advantage of Bubble Shield in Halo 3 though was that the player had the option to move the fight into the Bubble Shield, allowing guns and grenades back into the fight, all while amplifying the importance of melee. Armor Lock, however, not only completely negates guns and grenades, it also cancels out the abilities of melee. So for several seconds, a player can, at any point in time with no warning, completely disable the Golden Triangle. In short, a player literally has the ability to become invincible. Even if temporary, those precious seconds of invincibility represent colossal impacts on the gameplay experience. And while the fair counter-argument is, why not just wait till they exit the lock? Well, it's in itself an issue. The opponent has to disengage from combat to, ironically, combat a locked opponent. But armor abilities didn't just front on the means of combat. They also fronted on the means of movement in Halo, which we've discussed before is a major contributor to the Halo gameplay experience. I'd like to call Jetpack to the stand. Man oh man, Jetpack. Really, on the surface, it seems like just a quirky addition to the gameplay experience, and for the time, jetpacking in AAA FPSs was literally unheard of. But the either unforeseen or uncared for drawback was now players had access to levels of verticality unlike ever before, and not by map design alone, but by literally at random, as players could choose to fly around even during fights. We'd be here all day if I talked about each ability in specific, but I'll trust you can save us the time and that you can chew on how armor abilities affected the core gameplay experiences on your own. The major point is that these abilities were basically always in play, limited only by a few short cooldowns. For the first time, each player had the ability to twist the gameplay experience at will, and that player influence on the design was a major part of Reach's gameplay experience. So when Halo 4 found itself on the hot plate, 343 had an opportunity to take all that field data about armor abilities, the likes, dislikes, and ideas and act on those. So what was the outcome? Well, truthfully, it's really a mixed bag. You see, here's the thing. 343 did actually adjust several of the Reach abilities to correct their power potential. The jetpack saw adjustments to limit mobility, they did away with the more sketchy ones like armor lock, and there was even the addition of several callbacks to Halo 3's equipment items, like the auto sentry and the regeneration sphere. But where Halo 4 managed to trim away the obscene abilities, it made some weird missteps, like including Promethean vision, which was basically game-breaking by design. And if radar wasn't enough in Halo, Promethean vision really removed the aspects of stealth and flanking from a fight. Then there was a weird drawback to the adjustments made to the abilities. Some of them just weren't that great to use anymore, and even though Halo 4 added Sprint as a built-in ability, with the hopes of freeing up variety in the armor ability sandbox, the overpowered abilities outshined the underpowered ones so much that a new meta of abilities simply rose in place of Sprint's old meta. There's a paradoxical issue here if you think about it. Because armor abilities are loadout accessible, they need to be more balanced and checked than equipment did. However, this encourages players to find and exploit the least balanced and least checked abilities. I mean, power drain in Halo 3 might have been a doozy, but imagine if every player could spawn with power drain. The game would have been insanely different. So if we ask the question, are abilities bad for Halo? I think the answer might be yes, maybe. Well, in reality the answer is maybe yes, conditionally. Let's think back. The major issue with armor abilities is that they are loadout accessible, and as such are constantly in play. Furthermore, they are limited in usage only by recharge time. I think each armor ability in its own right can be interesting temporary change to the gameplay experience in Halo, in a similar fashion to equipment, and to be fair, several of them wouldn't even be too misplaced by having 2 or 3 pocketed uses per life. But the line is crossed when we find them dominating over the gameplay experience, not just modifying it. I would say games like Halo Reach and Halo 4 often were dominated by how armor abilities modified gameplay. The big question for Halo Infinite will line up like this. Whether it be this new grapple hook or any other new toy, and man, it could even be an old toy, will it be delivered to the player on loadout? And if so, what is the extent of its effect on gameplay? How often can it be used? In my eyes, the grapple hook looks like a clever modification to the jetpack, still allowing enhanced travel, but with the caveat of committed player action and limited range. If each new armor ability type item can find middle ground between enhancement and regulation, well, armor abilities might be looking at a renaissance. So here's my question to you. If any other armor ability can be moved to Halo Infinite, which should it be? Pick one, and how would you change it to make it fit our new rules here? That's going to do it for this video. Be sure you like and subscribe if you haven't, share this video with a friend, and like always, a big shout out to our supporters. If you want to support this channel, my Ko-fi link is below. Catch me in my Discord, and until next time, I'll catch you guys later.